Well, hey everybody, good morning and welcome to Lake Oconee Church. If we have not met yet, my name is Andy. I'm on staff here. Super glad that you're here along with us. This morning, we are launching a brand new series all about distractions. It's called Fatal Distractions. And I don't know about you, but I got to thinking about sometimes just recently that I felt very, very distracted. It was probably a couple of weeks ago. I had ordered coffee at the coffee shop, but my car often, I just drive down 44. I'm headed someplace, and I was just driving straight past the coffee shop, even though I knew I had moments before ordered coffee on the app. But it didn't dawn on me that I needed to pull over and go get the coffee that I had ordered. So many things in my head, so many things happening on the road, and I just got distracted. So maybe you can relate as you think about the distractions in your life. But we thought that this morning we might introduce this idea with a bit of a game. So if you would, put your hands together for Buffy and Matt as they come up to play our game titled Distractions. So if each of you would take a spot on either side of this incredible game board that we've got, here's what you'll have to do as we play this game. You've got a stack of cards in front of you. You're going to put one of those cards down into the center and repeat the number of the card that you just laid down, except that you also have to repeat the number of all the other cards that have been laid down in order. So you cannot get distracted. But in order to help you get distracted, from time to time, you'll put a card down, and that card will be orange, which means I get to ask you a very distracting question that you have to answer first before you can move on to name the cards that are in the stack. All right? Confusing? Perfect. So, the winner is the one who doesn't get distracted. Ready? Set? How about you go first? 4. Bold answer. Good job.
4-1.
Good job. Well done. This is working really well. All right, now I get to ask the question, how many numbers are you currently trying to remember?
3.
Okay, good. Now, what were the numbers?
415.
415. Good job. Oh, back-to-back orange. If you had to eat a vegetable with vanilla ice cream, what vegetable would that be?
Asparagus.
Perfect answer, asparagus. Everyone would have answered that. What are the numbers?
4157.
All right. We're doing well. This is going to be good.
41573.
Okay.
415732.
I'm getting excited. This is going to go on well.
We may have to.
4157325.
I believe that is correct if I didn't get distracted.
41573214. I think I lost.
What was your second to the last? I'm not sure, but
I said 1.
you said 1. I'm going to give this amazing Duncan card to you. You can share it if you would like.
Thank you.
Give Matt and Buffy a hand. Well done. Well done. See, the problem with playing a distraction game is your host cannot get distracted. You know how difficult that is? Well, I don't have a Duncan card for everybody in the room, but I do have a gift for those of you who are our guests today. So if this is your first Sunday with us as you leave this morning, our guest service team has put this gift together. It's really cool. I think you'll enjoy it. But you can grab this gift from our studio on your way out the door. In the studio, as you walk out, you can turn to the left. You'll see the studio right there. You probably walk past it on your way in. So I hope you'll grab that gift as you're leaving this morning. And if you're our guest online, you can go to guest.lakeoconee.church and we'll email something your way as a way of saying thank you as well. Well, over the next few minutes, what we'll do together is sing 3 encouraging songs with Alex and Shelby and our band. And the words will be right there in front of you on the screen. And from time to time, you may notice that somebody near you, they may lift a hand or two while they're singing, or maybe they'll clap towards the end of the song. And all of those are ways that we can affirm the truth of the song that we're singing. So I hope that you'll join in as soon as you're comfortable singing along with us. But for now, stand to your feet if you would. Say hey to someone near you, at least nod in their direction, and we'll keep this morning going.
Good morning, everyone. So glad you're here. So excited to sing with you. Let's do it. 1, 2, 3, 4. There's healing.
There is healing in the power of the Lord Most High. There is courage in the shadow of His wings. There is peace unending over all my life. There is freedom that washes over me. And I find all I need here in your presence, Lord. I open up my soul and you fill me up with all I need here in your presence, Lord. Where blessings overflow, there's always abundantly more. And there is rest in the goodness of the Lord my God. There is treasure in the kindness of my King. And there is comfort in knowing your unfailing love. My provider, you set my spirit free. And I find all I need here in your presence, Lord. I open up my soul and you fill me up with all I need here in your presence, Lord. Where blessings overflow, there's always abundantly more.
More than I could ask or seek.
More than I could ask or seek, more than I could fathom. God, your love for me is better than I imagined. It's more than I could ask or seek, more than I could fathom. God, your love for me is better than I imagined. It's more than I could ask or seek, more than I could fathom. God, your love for me is better than I imagined. I find all I need here every song we could ever sing, worthy of all the praise we could ever bring, worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you, God, we live for you. Jesus, the name above every other name. Jesus, the only one who could ever save. Worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. Yeah, we live for you.
Sing holy.
Holy, there is no one like Jesus, the only one who could ever save. You're worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you, oh God, we live for you.
I will build my life.
And I will build my life upon your love. It is a firm foundation. I will put my trust in you alone, and I will not be shaken. I will build my life upon your love. It is a firm foundation, and I will put my trust in you alone, and I will not be shaken. Holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder. Show me who you are and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those around me. I will build my life upon your love. It is a firm foundation. I will put my trust in you alone, and I will not be shaken.
Thanks so much for singing with us. You guys can have a seat.
You are loved by your Heavenly Father. And for some of us, we've never heard anyone say that to us that way before. So let me repeat it. You are loved by God, your Heavenly Father. And He invites us to respond to that love by building our lives upon His love, upon His precepts and His principles. And He challenges those of us who follow Him to reflect that love to those around us, to those that we get to know. And that can take a whole bunch of different forms, but one of the simplest ways that we can reflect that love is by inviting those that we do life with to come experience something that has been pivotal to us, to invite them to come and see, to come sit with me, to come experience something that I found to be meaningful in my spiritual journey, and I think you might find it meaningful in yours. And what we don't know is what God may do in the life of someone else as we extend that invitation to them in the same way that He's done something amazing in many of our lives. But that began with an invitation someone extended to us so long ago. So this week, as you go through the interactions that you go through with people that you've known a long time and people that you meet just in a mere moment, think through who could I invite to come sit with me, to come see what has been meaningful and pivotal in my journey. And I want to extend a big thank you to those of you who You intentionally are a part of creating these environments that we invite people to all the time. Because you have a hand in what happens in babies and preschoolers. You have a hand in what happens in our elementary kids, in our middle and high school students, and what happens here in this auditorium. Because every week you make it a point to prioritize the resources that you have and you give towards this mission so that not only can your life and your family's life be impacted, but other people's lives can as well. And whether you use the buckets that are in the back of the room or you give online through our website at give.lakeoconee.church, however you do that, thank you for your part in not only your own family's story, but the story of so many who sit alongside you here at our church. Well, in just a minute, we're going to connect with this morning's message. And as a different kind of church for Georgia's Lake Country, one of the things that we do from week to week is put the most engaging presenters in front of you and the people that you're inviting to sit along with you. And sometimes that means that they're live on our stage. Sometimes that means that the presenter is live at a nearby campus. And today we're going to be hearing from Joel Thomas. He is on stage in Buckhead today. He is the Buckhead Church campus pastor, and he's going to be taking us into part one of our series entitled Fatal Distractions. But I would like to take the chance to pray with you and for you for the many things that are going on in our lives right here in Georgia's Lake Country. So let's take a minute to do that. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you that you do love us, that you demonstrated that through Jesus, that you invite us to experience that love, to follow you. And God, I pray this morning that as Joel speaks to us, that we would have an even clearer understanding of what it means to live a life that is built upon your love. And God, I just want to take a minute to pray for those who right this minute are struggling with things at home, things that are going on in their health, some who are grieving some pretty deep losses that they've experienced. And God, I pray that your Spirit would remind them of your love for them. I pray that you would use us to be tangible examples of your love for them in some of these difficult moments. And I pray that you would bring hope in the midst of some really complicated stories. God, I pray too for the people of the Middle East and just the tensions that are there. And God, I just pray. I pray for healing in that region. I pray for peace. And God, I pray for you to continue to be at work. And God, in these next few minutes, may that work be done in our hearts, I pray. In Jesus' name, amen.
Well, I want to welcome all of you who are joining us at one of our Atlanta area locations, those of you who are joining us across the country and around the world. It's really my honor to be able to lead us and navigate us over the next couple of weeks as we jump into something new. Today, I want to start with a question. I'm just curious to take a poll, and I want you to join us wherever you are. I'd love for you to participate in this poll. How many of you, just real quick, by show of hands, how many of you think today there are more distractions than there were 10 years ago? Anybody, how many of you think more? Wow, that's a big number in this room. How many of you think there's less? Anybody think there's less? No hands. Anybody, same number? Same number of distractions? Okay, so this is good. I don't even have to onboard you to the idea that this is a big problem in our world. So we're like jumping ahead. I could probably skip half the talk, but I won't because I worked hard on it. So there's a lot of distractions in our world, and you have to admit, we see this all over the place, but there are some people you just don't want to be distracted, right? Like there's some people in your life, as you travel, as you do things, as you go about life, there's some people you just don't want to be distracted, like this guy right here. Like, just notice this guy's face right here. He tells it all about how you don't want your surgeon checking sports scores during the middle of surgery. Or this guy right here, and maybe it's hard to tell, I don't know if you can see the little airplanes here, but this guy's the air traffic controller, getting caught playing solitaire during work. Or here's another one. If you've ever done this, if you've ever gone skydiving, you do not want the person who packed your chute to be distracted while they're packing your chute, because literally some distractions can be fatal. Now, it's not all distractions. The distractions that most of us deal with on a regular basis, they're not all fatal or have the potential to be fatal, but they're not inconsequential either. Like, you don't want this person to be distracted, right? Like, you end up with a really bad haircut. Or if you're into tattoos, like, this is not a good look for you. If your tattoo artist gets distracted, you have no regrets. And then there's this guy, which I just have to say, some of you remember this stage. I thought we were out of this stage a few months ago. We should have been out of this stage until one of my little guys, who will remain nameless, made a mess all over the place. And it was because he's playing a game on his iPad while he's on the toilet. Speaking of distractions. And when I went, I'm like, what are you doing? Like, buddy, you have to focus on what you're doing. His answer was, well, at least my iPad didn't get any on it. So we have a long way to go in our household. I'm certainly not perfect at this. Some of you know this as well. There's all sorts of distractions in the workplace that hinder productivity. In fact, there was a study done about the top 5 productivity killers. Any guesses on number 1, top 5 productivity killers at work? Yeah, cell phones. Cell phones is number 1. Number 2, connected to number 1. Anybody? The internet. And so these are the top 2, and when you look at the statistics on how much productivity that these reduce organizations by, it's staggering. And it's followed by gossip and social media and personal email. And if you notice, 4 of the 5 on the list are related to technology. It's because in our world, technology has increased the number of distractions over the years. Now, before we get to that, I want to talk about this word for a second, because this word distraction, distractions, it's actually instructive. The idea of this word and where it comes from is important, and it helps us understand specifically what this word is all about. So distractions comes from a Latin word. It's called distrahere. Distrahere is the Latin word. Anybody take Latin in high school? Anybody? Okay. So you can correct me if I'm wrong. Dis means apart, and trahere means to drag or to draw. And if you think about it, this is exactly what happens, right? It's exactly what happens in our minds and in our brains, is there's no shortage of things that drag or draw apart our attention from things. And we intend to focus on certain things, but what happens is your brain's amazing, and it has the ability to think of 2 things at once, which I'm actually amazed all the time when I'm speaking. I'll see somebody, or I'll think of something else, and literally words are coming out of my mouth as I'm thinking about something else. And that's dangerous, because it often causes me to say the wrong things or things that I regret later. Hopefully that won't happen today. But your brain has this amazing ability to go in so many different directions at one time, or as we think at one time. It has an amazing ability to hold within it so many different neural connections to a lot of different things in life, different aspects of your life. And what happens is oftentimes our attention gets distracted from the things that we intended on focusing on. Our attention isn't on what we were intending for it to be on. And so here's what happens to me. If you think about how these overlap, what distractions are doing is they're actually pulling these 2 things apart, which, as you know, focus is pulling them together. But this represents your ability to focus, and this represents your productivity. But what distractions does is it tries to pull your attention away from your intention. You've experienced this before. You intended to do one thing. You intended to get a number of things done, and then other things took your attention away from your intention. And because your attention got taken away and sort of undermined your intention, Most of us, we got distracted. And here's the thing, we're culpable in this. A lot of times, there's distraction around us. I have 4 of them that live in my house, but there's distractions around us that pull us away from important tasks all the time. But most of us, we're culpable because we think we're good at multitasking, right? Like, how many multitaskers in the room? You're good at multitasking? Liars, you all multitask, and you think you're good at it. This is the amazing part. Earl Miller, he's a neuroscientist, a cognitive systems neuroscientist from MIT. He says it's an illusion. In fact, from the neurochemistry in your brain, multitasking is actually just an illusion. As humans, he says, we have a very limited capacity for simultaneous thought. We can only hold a little bit of information in the mind at any single moment. You don't actually multitask, you task switch. This is what's happening in your brain. You task switch. This wastes times, makes you error prone, and decreases your ability to be creative. Linda Stone, who's a researcher, she worked on a project called the Attention Project, and she discovered that multitasking is actually possible, but it's only possible when you're involved in one cognitive task and one mindless task, like you're listening to a podcast while you're eating. You need to focus on the podcast, but you can basically eat pretty mindlessly. So we try to import that into all areas of our life. The problem is, due to the integration of technology in our lives and in our world, it's common for most of us to routinely engage in 2 tasks requiring cognitive ability simultaneously. And so, because of that, this is amazing, we have a new social disorder, as if we needed another one of those. There's a new social disorder that's actually clinically been called continuous partial attention. And people live with this. Full transparency, I need this series as much as anybody. Preparing for this series on distractions, I almost hit a concrete column in the Buckhead Church parking lot on my phone, searching for books on focus. True story. And when I found it, I had already read 4 of the 5 books. And clearly they didn't help me. But it's crazy how many people live with this in their lives, this continuous partial distraction. And it's crazy that we even need a law restricting us from using our smartphones while operating a heavy piece of machinery going 70 to 80 miles an hour down the highway. But I do need that law to keep me from using my phone, and so do many of you. Because many in our society, many of us, if we're honest, we live in a constant state of distraction. And the new technology that we've had, it's programming us to do so. This continuous state of partial attention is, in reality, what it is it's a loss of focus, which it's like, duh, but this is why this is important. A loss of focus in reality is actually a lack of vision. Now, this is really what I want to talk about today, because when you lack vision in your life, the wisdom writer in the scriptures, you may not even know this came from the Bible, but he said that when where there is no vision, the people perish. And you may think, well, I mean, is it really that fatal? But I want you to think about this for a minute. When there's no vision or a loss of focus in a relationship, relationships die. When there's no focus on your dreams, the dreams get snuffed out. Organizations break down. When there's a lack of focus and a lack of vision, things die, things deteriorate. And even if you have a vision for whatever, for your life, for your marriage, for your family, for your organization, for your future, the truth is, a loss of focus is essentially the same thing as losing sight of your vision. You have a lack of vision. You're not really aiming towards something when you lose sight of what you're aiming toward. And now, many of us have lost out. You've missed out significantly due to distracted lives. For some of you, this happened professionally. Urgent things crowded out important things. And this is as small as you missed a deadline, or you lost a deal, or you were short on your, on your quota, or you didn't get the promotion. And then some of us have experienced this relationally, and the stakes are a little higher there, and you didn't prioritize a certain relationship. And now there's distance in your marriage. There's little substance in relationship with your parents. For some of us, there's resentment from our kids, because in a season we were distracted from that relationship and from prioritizing that relationship, and we had vision, we had desire, we had intention, but our attention got dragged away. It undermined our intention. tension. Now, 25 years ago, I heard Andy, our senior pastor, unpack a story involving a guy named Nehemiah, and it was transformational in my 20s, and it was essential in my 30s and 40s, and I want to talk to you a little bit about that story today in connection to this idea of distraction. So a little bit of backstory on Nehemiah. Here's a quick, I need to take a quick drink of water. Quick backstory and a history lesson on Nehemiah. We have to go back, and again, this is just, be with me for a second if you're not into history. In 587 BC, Jerusalem came under siege. It was a series of campaigns that took Jerusalem and destroyed the temple of God that Solomon built. And so what happened was at that time, the Babylonians captured the Israelites and carried a bunch of them off toward Babylon. And so there were a bunch of Israelites that were led into exile. In 539 BC, though, Cyrus, he was the king of the Medes and the Persians. You probably remember this from high school, or you probably don't, but you were taught it. The Medes and the Persians took over the Babylonians, and King Cyrus was the one who conquered the Babylonians. Well, he had no interest in the Jewish people that were in exile, so he released the Jewish exiles, and he let them go back. And so Zerubbabel, which is just kind of fun to say, Zerubbabel led the first wave of exiles back to Jerusalem. So they're headed west back to Jerusalem, and they're going back primarily to rebuild the temple. And Zerubbabel was successful in that. 516, the temple reconstruction was completed, and things were on a good track. The people of God started to worship God in his temple again. And then Ezra, who was still in Babylon, he leads a second wave of people. Calling the people to return to God's law. And this didn't go well. In fact, Ezra, he took matters into his own hands, and families were destroyed, people were divided. I mean, you should go read the story. I don't have time to tell you the whole story. It's an amazing story, and in some ways it's tragic, and in some ways it's incredible and instructive and informative. But here's why this is important. In 446 BC, there's a report that comes back to Jerusalem, and this is where I want to pick up the story. And the report comes back, and Nehemiah is working next to the king. He's actually the king's cupbearer, and he's working next to the king, and this report comes back. And this is where we pick up the story. It says, I asked them, Nehemiah speaking, I asked them about the Jews who had returned there, who returned to Jerusalem from captivity, and about how things were going in Jerusalem in general. And they said to me, things are not going well. For those who return to the province of Judah, they're in great trouble and disgrace. This is the people of God. This is Nehemiah's people. He goes on, he says, the wall of Jerusalem has been torn down, and the gates have been destroyed by fire. When I heard this, Nehemiah said, I sat down and I wept. In fact, for days I mourned and fasted and prayed to the God of heaven. Now, this is what strikes me strange about the story is this is not a new detail. I mean, the walls were destroyed and the city was burned before the people, many of them were carried off into exile. But this one detail that was included in the story by the writer, I think is important. In fact, it's a literary clue to one of the most important things that captured Nehemiah's heart. Nehemiah had also learned that the temple wasn't being maintained. They'd reconstructed, it wasn't being maintained, and they weren't making the proper sacrifices, and people weren't living according to God's law. He learned about all these things, but he had fixated on this idea of the wall being destroyed and the boundaries around the city no longer being there. The ideas and the customs, because there was no wall, of the people outside and their religious practices from these surrounding nations, it infiltrated their community and was beginning to be embraced by the Jewish people. And so if we fast forward early the following spring, Nehemiah says, I was serving the king his wine as the cupbearer. He has an important job. He's trusted by the king. And I had never before appeared sad in his presence, in the presence of the king. So the king asked me, he said, why are you looking so sad? You don't look sick to me. You must be deeply troubled. And Nehemiah, I think he probably paused and he wondered, I don't know how this is going to land on the king. He has his own kingdom. But this is what Nehemiah said. He said, how can I not be sad? For the city where my ancestors are buried is in ruins, and the gates have been destroyed by fire. Once, the powerful nation that I was a part of, it's laying in ruins, it's being destroyed, and the walls surrounding the city have been torn down and the city has been burned. Nehemiah had a burden. Some of you have heard this described as a holy discontent. Cal Newport in his book, Deep Work, which I commend, it's a great book, especially if you're a leader. It's a fantastic book. Cal Newport, in his book, Deep Work, he identifies this as a terrifying longing. I'm going to come back to this in just a minute. Sorry about my mic there. He describes this as a terrifying longing. And I love that description because when you think about it, that's what happens when you have something that you long for, you dream for, you have a vision for. In some ways, it's terrifying, but there's this deep burden inside of you. And this is where Nehemiah is. Now, the king was so moved by Nehemiah's sadness. I mean, he saw how sad he was and his deep longing that the king responded. He said this, "How can I help you? Like, I can see you're troubled. You've been a faithful servant, and I want to help." And so Nehemiah replied, and he said, "If it please the king, and if you're pleased with me, your servant, send me to Judah to rebuild the city where my ancestors were buried." Now, this was a bit of a tall ask because Nehemiah is basically asking to go back and rebuild this city that once was powerful and it had conquered and it had successfully warded off all of its enemies, with God's help, of course. But Nehemiah is basically asking the king to sort of risk and go, "Hey, I'm going to go back. I just want to rebuild my city," but it could be rebuilding an empire or a power on the inside. But the king not only released him of his role, he resourced him with the support and the supplies that would be necessary. So it seems like things are looking up. Nehemiah's headed back, full head of steam. He's got the stuff he needs. He's got the people he needs. But immediately he's met with tons of threats and resistance from both the outside and on the inside. People outside the surrounding nations who were threatened by Jerusalem being rebuilt, and people within the city walls. And there were at least 3 unique distractions. As a matter of fact, next week we're going to unpack those 3 distractions because there are 3 common distractions that we all deal with in our lives. But this all came to a head. All these distractions, all this resistance came to a head when the temple was nearing completion. And this is where I want to land today. Sanballat, Tobiah, Geshem the Arab, these were leaders from the surrounding nations, and the rest of our enemies found out that I had finished rebuilding the wall and that no gaps remained, though we had not set up the doors in the gates. So the city hadn't been secured yet. So Sanballat and Geshem sent a message asking me to meet them at one of the villages in the plain of Oconee, which should be a literary clue to us. This wasn't originally written in English. But Nehemiah's smart. He knows what these guys are up to, and he knows they're up to no good. And so Nehemiah's response, you've probably heard this before, in this very famous statement. After they were asking him to come meet with them, he says, no, I can't do that. I'm doing a great work, and I cannot come down. Nehemiah was aiming his life towards something of significant value. And in fact, the invitation didn't just come once. 4 more times the invitation came to Nehemiah, and 4 times he gave them back the same response. I'm doing a great work and I can't come down. I'm doing a great work and I can't come down. But by the 5th time, it came with the request came up with a made-up story. It was sort of, hey, listen, we're going to report back to the king. King Cyrus, we're going to report back to him that you have secret ambitions and that you're really plotting a rebellion. And they said, we're going to report back to him if you don't come meet with us. But even in the midst of that, Nehemiah didn't budge. He wasn't going to be drawn apart. He wasn't going to be dragged apart. He wasn't going to let his attention be drawn away from the thing that he had come back and intended to do. Here's my question. Before we get to some of the specific distractions next week, how is that possible? What made that possible? I mean, how is it? What was Nehemiah's secret? How do you stay that focused? And some of us, if you're a business leader, you lead a family, you're trying to raise humans, you're trying to lead an organization, you're trying to lead a school. I mean, this is something we all struggle with. I mean, how is it that Nehemiah stays laser focused in the midst of all these distractions? Because we all have the temptation at times to be pulled away. And I think it was connected to this terrifying longing. I mean, Nehemiah's response about his sadness was, how can I not be sad? I mean, how can this not overcome me? How can this not consume me? For the city where my ancestors are buried is in ruins, and the gates have been destroyed by fire. You see, for Nehemiah, the wall, its boundary around the city, it represented so much more. It was a physical symbol of God's faithfulness to this promised land he had given his people. And Nehemiah was convicted that rebuilding the wall, both functionally and symbolically, would be the symbol of the thing that would begin to restore God's people as a chosen and set apart people. And he was burdened. He had this terrifying longing inside of him, and it both captured and required his full attention. David Brooks, who wrote a book called The Art of Focus, he said, if you want to win the war for attention, don't try to say no to trivial distractions. Try to say yes to the subject that arouses a terrifying longing, and let that terrifying longing crowd out everything else. And that's precisely what Nehemiah did. His statement, I'm doing a great work, wasn't focused on the distractions. It was focused on his yes, the thing he had said yes to. And he said, look, I'm gonna allow this yes, this terrifying longing that's driving me to this yes, to crowd out everything else. Now, Nehemiah's longing, it ended up serving as the thing that caused him to have laser focus, but it also sustained that. It sustained his focus on that vision. And here's why. This is what I believe. Because I believe great work is found just on the other side of a terrifying longing. And so I'm gonna come back to this in a minute, but I just want you to think for a second, like inside of you, like there is a burden somewhere. There's a longing for something. Some of you are discontent with where you are or what you're involved in. You've thought regularly, there has to be much more to life than this. And that's that deep, intense desire that often emerges when we start questioning our circumstances, or you find yourself dissatisfied with your current reality. It's pointing to something, a terrifying longing inside of you. And here's the thing, great work is just on the other side of that when we follow it. Here's the problem in our society. We've become accustomed to medicating and numbing ourselves from sadness and from longing inside of us because it's too terrifying. It's too much of a risk. There's too much not only distraction, but there's too much resistance and opposition to the thing that kind of burdens us on the inside. And some of you have a terrifying longing that you've tried to manage down, and you've tried to numb, and you've tried to deny for years and for years. And a longing for more, in reality, it can be terrifying because it often leads us outside of our comfort zones. It leads us into uncertainty. It causes us to have to embrace change and pursue greater meaning and fulfillment. A terrifying longing, if you're going, well, how do I name that? How do I determine what that is? Well, it involves three things. A terrifying longing involves a problem. For Nehemiah, it was the torn down walls. It requires a possibility. Nehemiah didn't know it was possible, but with the king's help, rebuilding the walls was possible. And then Nehemiah's burden, he has this passion to see his people restored, to see the wall restored. And here's the thing, at the intersection of this, at the intersection of passion and purpose and possibility, we discover a terrifying longing. And that terrifying longing actually leads to vision. In Andy's book, Visioneering, it's a great read. I commend it to you as well. It's an incredible book years ago. He says that vision always begins as a solution to a problem. When you think about your kids growing up in a difficult world, you think about how you want to raise your kids and how you want to launch them one day. You're looking for a solution to that problem. When you look at the divorce rates that plague our nation and the difficulty people have in staying in a marriage and thriving and living with a partner lifelong, as a lifelong partner, I mean, there's a problem there that needs to be addressed, and you're looking for a solution. Vision, having a vision for something, for a relationship, for an organization, for being at a better place or a different place in life, it always begins as a solution to a problem. The problem is what is. It's what is. The possibility is what could be. And our passion is what inside of us causes us to say, this not only could be, but this should be. And our passion drives us because of the terrifying longing inside of us. And Nehemiah decides he needs to focus on the ruins. The walls need to be rebuilt, and his heart's broken by this. And so what comes on the other side of that for Nehemiah is his great work. He's decided, this is the great work that's worthy of my life, and I'm gonna give my life to this great work. Now, here's the thing. This is the question I have for you. What's your great work? Not what fills your time each day, or what do you spend the most of the time doing? I mean, that might be your great work, but it might not be. What's the thing that the terrifying longing inside of you has driven you to grab onto, to move toward, that you've decided at all costs, I'm gonna build this wall? What are you building? Or who? Who are you building? Regardless of your season, here's what I believe. I believe God has something great for you in the season that you're in. Ephesians 2:10, we've looked at these verses before. It says, for we are God's handiwork, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which God prepared in advance for us to do. Did you know that you are God's handiwork and he has prepared in advance for you to do something great? If you don't believe that, that's not just because you don't believe in yourself or you don't have confidence to pursue the great work that God has for you. That in some ways is you discounting the handiwork of God. God didn't make a mistake when he made you. He gave you the gifts and the talents and the skills he did. And he's prepared you for the great work that he has ahead of you. And I'll just say this, if you're here and you're with us or you're joining us online or you're one of our other locations and you're not a Jesus follower, I'm so glad you're here. For some of you, you've felt stuck for a really long time. And you felt aimless, and you found yourself wondering, there has to be more in life. And the things that you thought were gonna fulfill you didn't end up fulfilling you. And is it possible? Is it possible this is why? Is it possible because that you've chased after the things that aren't the good work that God, when he created you, that you might be the handiwork of God, and that when he created you, he intended for you to do? I believe that's possible. And often these good works, by the way, we romanticize this and we glorify it in our cultures, but often these good works are connected to roles we've already been given, which are also the things that we routinely get our continuous partial attention. It's like the humans we're taking care of in our homes and the roles and the jobs that we have. But here's the thing. By focusing on the good work God's given us, the stuff he's already entrusted to you, he might lead you to a great work, or it might be the great work. Focusing on that, even if you don't think it's great work, or if somebody else hasn't glorified your great work. I just want to say this for parents, for teachers, for coaches, for mentors. Investing in the next generation is great work. Marketplace leaders, creating meaningful jobs for people that provides necessary income so they can put food on the tables of their homes so they can eat and live indoors. I mean, that is great work. For our nonprofit leaders who we love to partner with, serving under-resourced or marginalized people in our communities and around the world is great work. When you approach, Colossians 3 says, when you approach whatever you do with all your heart and you do it as unto the Lord, you're doing great work. It's not always about going and finding some new great thing to do. Sometimes, however, like in Nehemiah's case, God intends for us to do something else. And maybe some of the things that are in front of you, maybe the job you have, maybe the things you're spending your time doing when you're not at work or providing for your family or whatever it is, they're actually distracting you from the great work that God has for you. And that can be scary. Nehemiah, he didn't actually set out to do something great. He was just moved by his terrifying longing. He didn't set out to do something great. In fact, Nehemiah left a great job. I mean, he's right next to the king. He's trusted by the king. We don't know how he got there, but he's in a high, prestigious role in the kingdom. And he left that to walk toward a mess. A mess. The people, the nation was in ruins. They weren't doing what they needed to do, and the nation was far from being restored. But it was his terrifying longing that provided him with the courage to follow God into doing the great work that he had for him in the beginning. Now, before we close, it would be amiss for me not to mention the extraordinary example of this, an extraordinary example of this that's profoundly impacted many of us. In fact, it's profoundly impacted my life. 28 years ago, after watching too many people walk away from their faith, after watching too many people say no to Jesus for unnecessary reasons, 6 people had a terrifying longing. They had a terrifying longing to draw bigger circles, uncomfortably sized, large circles, like the size of circles that Jesus drew. And from the very beginning, there was opposition. There was no shortage of distractions similar to Nehemiah. And for 25 of those 28 years, I've had a front row seat to watch the leaders who launched into this, following their terrifying longing in the beginning, seeing the great work that they've committed themselves to, the great work they refused to come down from, and the great work that has impacted an immeasurable number of people in this city, across the nation, and around the world. Their courage and focus serves as an incredible illustration for us of what's possible when you allow God to grip your heart with a terrifying longing. When you see a problem that exists in the world and you think, that's what is, but that's not what could be. And you begin to dream, and God places something in your heart, a dream in your heart. You begin to see that what could be is better than what is. And it not only could be, but you have a passion that it should be. That's when God's leading in your heart. And here's the thing I want you to know today. God's placed something like that in all of us. I don't know what it is for you, but I want you to know that great work is found just on the other side of that terrifying longing. So I pray that question, what your great work is, what your terrifying longing is, I pray it would bother you. May God sensitize your heart to the longing he's placed inside of you. May you discover or rediscover the clarity regarding the great work that God has for you, whether it's the work he has right in front of you or some other work that he's leading you toward. That because of his handiwork, he's prepared you in advance to do. May God lead you to do whatever you do. Whatever he's given and placed in your hands right now, to do with all your heart and is unto the Lord. And may you stay fueled and focused by your terrifying longing inside of you, even in the face of distraction, to courageously declare, I'm doing a great work and I can't come down. I'm doing a great work and I can't come down. These people need me. This next generation needs me. This organization needs me. We're doing great work and we can't come down. We're shining a light for Jesus in our community. We can't come down. Whatever it is that you placed your hands to, may it be the great work that God prepared in advance for you to do. And may you stay focused on it for the rest of your days. Let's pray together. God, thank you today for this story of Nehemiah. Thank you for the blueprint it's given us. Thank you for the illustration of some people who were really, really faithful to care about people who didn't go to church, who were burdened because there were plenty of churches, but not churches that people that were far from you wanted to go to. Thank you that 28 years ago, they risked by leaving good jobs, gainful employment, prepared for their family. And they chose to follow the terrifying longing inside of them to create the sort of environments that have benefited so many of us, so many of our families. God, I can only imagine there's people in the sound of my voice that you've placed something great inside of them. And maybe today, maybe you're stirring today, maybe you're awakening today, you're unlocking that thing in their heart. God, I pray today that you would give them the clarity as to what you want them to do next, what the next right step is. I pray you give them the courage to take a step in that direction. And then I pray you give them the focus to stay focused on that, to follow you in your time and at your pace, but to follow you in that and stay focused on it so that you can do the great work that you want to do through them. And I pray it in Jesus' name.
Well, how about you today? Are you only partially focused on what God has given you to tackle that is right in front of you? Or are you so living in a state of distraction that you've been unable to grasp what it is that God has set out just beyond your reach that He desires for you to accomplish? What is it that is distracting you? Something to think about and ponder as we continue to apply this study to our lives, to our hearts, and to the way that we live in the world where God has placed us. I hope that you'll consider that. And I want to encourage you that maybe the thing that you could do this week would be to invite somebody to come sit beside you. Come sit with me. This is a helpful series. Maybe there's something in it for you, like there has been for me. So I encourage you to take advantage of that. If you're our guest today, thank you so much for being here, being a part of this morning. And don't leave without stopping by the studio and grabbing your gift quickly as you head out the door. Thank you for being with us. And for all of us, I hope you have a wonderful week, and we'll see you again really soon. Take care.
Like new sunglasses.